Hi there, I'm Professor Blackmore, and I want to welcome you to ProfessorBlackmore.com, where our goal is to empower results through real productivity. And if you haven't been here before, I'd like to ask that you please subscribe to my YouTube channel and click the bell so you'll be notified whenever I post new videos. And please also follow me on TikTok and Instagram. And today I'm coming back to you to discuss further developments surrounding the Alec Baldwin shooting on the Rust movie set in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Now again, I want to say right off the top that I absolutely think the end result of this shooting was an accident on the part of Alec Baldwin. And while I do think Alec Baldwin and maybe some others on the movie set may be open to considerable civil exposure, at this moment in time, I still do not think that Alec Baldwin will be charged criminally. And recent developments surrounding the person who was hired to be the armorer on the set lends even more support for my opinion, and I'll get to that in just a minute. But before I talk about the movie set armorer, I want to clear up some confusion surrounding some of the developments that emerged from the Santa Fe County Sheriff's investigation. Now, a few days ago, the Santa Fe County Sheriff and District Attorney did a press conference wherein they both made it clear that they're not ruling out criminal charges against anyone in this matter, and that the use of the word accident should not be used in this matter because they have not reached any conclusions, and they're in the process at this moment in time of conducting a criminal investigation. Well, this is the exact reason that I posted my earlier video, because it seemed that everyone was clear that criminal charges would not be brought in this case. Wow. As I stated previously, I was of the mindset that this could absolutely result in criminal charges, and you can review my prior video to review all of the reasons why. During the press conference, the sheriff talked about evidence compiled thus far as a result of a warrant executed on the location of the Rust movie set. And here is a copy of the warrant. Now, before a judge will sign a warrant, the law enforcement official requesting that warrant must also submit an affidavit setting forth the probable cause prerequisites of the Fourth Amendment to the United States Constitution, which governs procedures for searches and seizures in the United States. And one of those prerequisites is that when a law enforcement official submits a request for a warrant, that they also provide probable cause, and that probable cause is usually provided in an affidavit. Now, the sheriff's affidavit included some information about things the armorer and the assistant director on the set said to the sheriff during his investigation. So, what people need to understand is that this is still only the sworn affidavit of the sheriff, not the armorer or the assistant director. And so anything said in the sheriff's affidavit about anything anyone else said to him, in my opinion, is hearsay. And this would be my position at the time of trial if I represented the armorer or the assistant director. So if I represented either the armorer or the assistant director at the time of trial, I would fight to make sure these portions of the sheriff's affidavit would never see the light of day during a trial. And if a motion like this were granted by the judge, then that means that the jury would never have an opportunity to hear these things that either one of these individuals said to the sheriff. Now, on the other hand, anything you actually hear the armorer or the assistant director actually say on TV or anywhere else on their own, or in any sworn affidavit that you actually see that they have actually signed in the presence of a notary, now that's going to be fair game. But when you're watching the news and other gossip entertainment shows. We're hearing people refer to the sheriff's affidavit and commingle what the armorer and or the assistant director said to make you think that they're getting this information from sworn affidavits that have been signed by the armorer or the assistant director, when I believe that their attorneys would never ever allow them to do that. And it could be possible that there are some written statements out there, but pursuant to the Fifth Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, the sheriff will be required to notify them that they have the right to remain silent, and pursuant to the Sixth Amendment of the United States Constitution, the sheriff would have been required to notify them that they have the right to seek legal counsel before saying anything. Now, many of you have heard of this being called the Miranda warnings. And so that is what is included in the Miranda warnings. You're going to have your Fifth Amendment right to remain silent and your Sixth Amendment right to have an attorney be present. So anything said prior to receiving this warning cannot be used in a criminal trial, and it's just unsubstantiated gossip. Now, there are times where law enforcement officials will seek out information from individuals without giving this warning, but they already know that the information that they are trying to elicit is not going to be used in the criminal investigation, and sometimes they're just trying to get information to help them in their investigation. But be clear, any information that is received before these warnings are given cannot be used in a criminal investigation against you. Now, the second point that I want to cover with you today is the fact that we're hearing the armorer, Miss Gutierrez-Reed, is speaking through her attorneys for the first time recently. And there are many facts that are still unclear at this moment in time, like whether the armorer or the prop master were on the set when the assistant director handed the gun to Alec Baldwin. In general, if they were not, they're probably not going to be criminally charged in this manner. You'll remember in my previous video, the IATSE union representative sent an email to its union members stating that there was no local 44 prop master on the set at the time of the shooting. So if this is true, what does this mean? It seems clear that the assistant director, Dave Hall, handed the gun to Alec Baldwin. So if all the local 44 union employees who would normally be in the chain of custody were not present, and Mr. Hall took it upon himself to hand the gun to Alec Baldwin, I personally don't see how the armorer or the prop master could be criminally charged. And now this brings me to my third point of interest, and that is, how did the bullet get into the gun and who put the bullet in the gun? In addition to communications made by the armorer, Miss Gutierrez-Reed, through her attorneys, she states that she has no idea how live ammo got on the set and that no live ammo was used on the set. So this brings me back to conclusionary possibilities that I posed in my prior video. And I'm even more sure there will be criminal charges if what the armorer is saying is true. Recent developments reveal that people were engaged in target practice with live rounds using the same guns that were used on the set, and that a round associated with this reckless behavior could have been left in the gun when it was handed to Alec Baldwin. So number one, it's highly possible that someone intentionally placed a live cartridge into the weapon in the furtherance of proving that the set was unsafe to substantiate the disgruntled efforts of the union membership, never thinking that the weapon would actually be aimed at someone or that someone would actually end up being killed or injured. Now, if this happened and someone intentionally placed a live cartridge in the weapon, irrespective of whether they thought someone would actually end up dead, this would be a clearly reckless event, and there would be clear criminal liability. i.e. manslaughter, for example, or anyone who would have intentionally placed a live cartridge in the weapon. And if this happened, it would lessen the exposure for criminal charges regarding the person who would have handed the weapon to Alec Baldwin and Alec Baldwin himself, although their exposure for civil liability for negligence and that of the movie company also would still remain very high. Now, number 2, it's also possible that the gun already had a live round inadvertently left in it as a result of individuals carrying out this reckless act of target practice, and then no one actually ever cleared the weapon. And so maybe someone who was not trained, i.e. The assistant director, Dave, assumed that it was clear without having an expert to confirm it before handing the weapon to Alec Baldwin. Now, if this happened, especially if the armorer and the prop master were not on the set at the time and had no knowledge of the target practice that was occurring with the set weapons, then there would most likely not be any criminal charges against the armorer, the prop master, the assistant director, or Alec Baldwin. But exposure for criminal charges would still remain extremely high for anyone who would have been engaged in any target practice with these weapons, especially if they knew these were the same weapons that would be used during movie set operations, and if these were movie set professionals who should have known or would have known that they were not supposed to be using these guns for target practice. But there again, as you can see, there are a lot of dispositive facts that are still unknown. We just don't know who this third person or persons could have been. And if you go through some of the communications that the armorer is recently releasing, she states that the practice was for the prop master to provide the weapons to her. Then she would go through the practice of clearing those weapons, and that she would hand them directly to Alec Baldwin or to the assistant director, Dave, or Mr. Hall, as he's been called. So no one can assume that the armorer or the prop master or anyone was present or not present at the time. We only know at this particular point in time that the assistant director handed the weapon to Mr. Baldwin. It is still a little unclear of exactly how the assistant director obtained the weapon in the moments immediately contiguous to him handing the weapon to Alec Baldwin. You see, if the weapons had been handed to the armorer by the prop master at some point in time earlier in the day, and they were left somewhere, and those two individuals left with other union membership who walked off the set, and Mr. Hall is there, irrespective of whether he would say that he obtained the weapons from the armorer, it is going to be critical to know, okay, when did you receive this weapon? And what was the chain of custody of the weapon? If it was hours before, what would be the chain of custody of the weapon? Could someone else have intervened in that time frame to tamper with that weapon? We just really don't know. So the exposure for criminal charges will remain high for anyone who could have been engaged in target practice at some point in time with these weapons. But again, I still don't believe on these facts at this particular point in time that criminal charges would be likely for the assistant director, Mr. Hall, or Alec Baldwin. But their exposure for civil negligence and that of the movie company still remains very high. And again, there's just no way of getting around the fact that a wrongful death settlement for the family of Halyna Hutchins and some type of occupational injury or workers' compensation settlement for Mr. Souza, who was also injured during the shooting, would be very likely. So based on all of these recent facts, I'm even more sure than I was before that criminal charges may be very likely filed in this case. But I still don't think that Alec Baldwin will be criminally charged. Now, there's some of you who disagree with me in that analysis in the first video, and you're welcome to continue to disagree with me. And so you're welcome to put your comments in the comments section below. And for the others of you, please let me know what you think by placing your comments in the comments section below as well. And in my last video, I talked to you briefly about requisite culpable mental states that are required to support a criminal allegation in an actual criminal trial. And so if there are no other shocking bombshells in the meantime, when I come back in my next video, I'll talk to you about why I don't think these facts can survive the beyond a reasonable doubt standard of the criminal negligence or criminal recklessness requisite culpable mental states as they relate to Alec Baldwin. But in the meantime, if you've enjoyed this video, please give me a big thumbs up. And please also subscribe to my YouTube channel and click the bell so you'll be notified whenever I post another video on this topic. And please also follow me on TikTok and Instagram.